There is news today on the presidential campaign trail. NBC News now reporting that Donald Trump has narrowed his vice presidential shortlist to just 2 or possibly 3 candidates. Previous reporting indicated Trump was focused on 4 potential running mates: North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, Florida Senator Marco Rubio, and South Carolina Senator Tim Scott. Despite a weeks-long groveling performance as a dutiful Trump surrogate, NBC's new reporting suggests that Tim Scott is no longer a top contender. NBC News also reports that while Senator Marco Rubio remains in contention, doubts about his enthusiasm for the job and concerns about navigating a constitutional hang-up that would require Trump or Rubio to establish residency in another state have persisted in ways that could jeopardize his chances. Joining us now, Jonathan Allen, senior national politics reporter for NBC News and one of the reporters bylined on this story. So Jonathan, before we get into all the back and forth here and the great reporting that you've done here, I want to start by reminding us that none of this is normal, and that even though we're talking about a Veep stakes, this is not a normal Veep stakes because this is not a normal candidate. And whoever he chooses is not being chosen to check his authoritarian tendencies. They are, in fact, being chosen because they are signing up for letting him run free.
Well, certainly, Alicia, this is an unusual process. Typically, what you'll see from presidential candidates is a very close to the vest process where they don't really talk about these other possibilities. Here we see Donald Trump appearing everywhere with the folks. He'll go out and ask his crowds, as he did earlier this week, whether they think one of the candidates, in this case J.D. Vance, ought to be on his ticket. So certainly an unusual process. I think we all know from Donald Trump's experience and from what he said about his last vice president, Mike Pence, that he was disappointed that Pence did not support his effort to overturn the election. And you can gather from that, I think you can glean from that Donald Trump will be looking at that level of loyalty as a qualification.
Well, to that point, I think that's what I actually find most interesting about sort of the subtext of your reporting here, which is that Trump, as we've watched, he's dangled the vice presidency, at least the ability to run with him in front of people like Tim Scott. He's gotten them to perform for him on the campaign trail. And yet that is no guarantee, right? And so people sort of keep showing up, keep auditioning, and the loyalty to him seems to be the one consistent variable.
Yeah, it's like he's dragging a $100 bill across the floor on a string and seeing how fast the candidates can crawl and how much they will fight with each other in order to try to get to that $100 bill. And by the way, he may just pull it up with a string at the end. Every time I talk to folks close to Trump in his campaign, they all acknowledge that they're not entirely sure that the person he's going to select will be one of these people who have been playing the apprentice game.
Right, because as you remind us, it also is for him about the reality TV show of it all, and the fact that if we're talking about this, then we're not talking about his myriad legal woes. We're not talking about all of his vulnerabilities as a candidate. Part of your writing, you write, a key point of tension and indecision in the Trump campaign is balancing the desire for a running mate who is non-threatening against the desire for someone who can also be considered the future of Trump's movement. Talk to me about that tension, what it means to be non-threatening to Donald Trump.
Yeah, Alicia, it's an interesting sort of internal debate in Trump world about exactly what those best qualifications are, particularly when it comes to an heir apparent, and whether it's good for Trump to sort of make someone the next person to take the torch of the MAGA movement, or if he would prefer to not be in that position yet of handing off the torch. And it gets to your earlier question, which is, sort of what's the best way to play this, I guess, for some of these candidates, or the way that they're being looked at by Trump in terms of not outshining him. If you're Donald Trump and you like the limelight, the thing you hate the most is anything that takes that away from you. And if you have a vice president that is looked at as the next presidential nominee of the Republican Party, it won't be but a year or two before that person starts getting a whole lot more attention. So we'll have to see, who Trump goes with and how they sort of fit into that question of the MAGA movement and succeeding him. But from what I've heard from a lot of the sources I've spoken to, they believe he really doesn't want somebody that will compete with him for attention during his term.
Here's the thing you know well, Jonathan Allen, which is we talk about the messaging, we talk about the debates, we talk about the optics, and at the end of the day, so much of this just comes down to the ground campaign, but that is virtually impossible to capture in this context. New reporting that Biden has just hired his 1,000th battleground staffer. The Trump campaign reportedly outsourcing their GOTV efforts to groups like Turning Points USA. What do you make of the difference in that strategy?
I mean, I think it's born of necessity for Trump. He got on the ground later. There was an important court case that sort of gave them the opportunity to coordinate more with outside groups, and they're going to need it because Trump raised money slower, which meant that he was unable to open as many offices and put as many field staff out there as he wanted to initially. And so there's going to be some support network for him on the outside. You know, Biden and the Democrats, the DNC, any other groups that want to help them, they're also going to be out in the field. I think one really important thing to remember here, though, Alicia, is that the ground game only matters in a handful of states because only a handful of states are going to determine the Electoral College math. And it only ends up mattering in a very, very close race. And some of these battlegrounds will probably end up being 3 points or 4 points, and probably the ground game didn't end up making the difference there. But in those states like Wisconsin last time, where you're talking about, or Arizona or Georgia, where you're talking about a difference of like 10 or 20,000 votes in the state, the ground game could be everything.
Indeed. Jonathan Allen, thank you so much for bringing us your reporting and being with us tonight.